Today we are completing our 3-week dive into this marvelous book, The Way of Integrity, Finding the Path to Your True Self by Martha Beck. And before we jump in, I just really want to encourage you to pick up this book. We have some in our bookstore here, our online bookstore. You can find them anywhere. What I absolutely love about Martha Beck is that she's really real, and she's funny, and she's teaching from this really deep place of wisdom within herself. I have literally enjoyed every minute that I have spent with this book, even though it has kicked my tuchus in multiple ways. So you know that's good writing, right? When you can enjoy that. Reverend Shannon kicked off our exploration of this work by defining integrity for us. The word integrity simply comes from the Latin root meaning integer, which simply means intact. Martha Beck writes, to be in integrity is to be one thing, whole and undivided. So integrity isn't something that we have to go looking for. It's already within us. It's simply that place within us that is whole, that is wholeness. It's that thing that we feel rise up in us when we hear the choir sing, or when we contemplate these flowers, or when we think about the great work done by a man like Ray Jubitz. It's that thing that we feel rise up in us when we connect with somebody else's heart, or we feel that sense of calm that goes beyond all our understanding, especially when we're dealing with our children. This wholeness is a place in us that has never been touched by this human experience. It's never been enculturated, and it has never been harmed. It's our soul. It's the part of spirit that lives in you. It's the place that we can reliably turn to for truth with a capital T. Just like love or wholeness or spirit or grace or peace, integrity is another word for God. God in you. God in me. And so this book gives us a path back to that place within ourselves and a way to reliably live from that place. In part 2 of our dive into the way of integrity, last week practitioner Sarah took us through the innocent mistakes that we all make, which lead us away from our integrity. And she taught us that making a commitment to live in integrity, to live from this place of truth within us, is actually the end of self-betrayal. Sarah shared with us that Martha Beck's reminder of the big truth that we all really need to know. You are infinitely worthy. You are infinitely precious. You have always been enough. You will always be enough. There is no place you don't belong. You are lovable. You are loved. You are love. The big truth. The way of integrity invites us into that place within us that has never doubted this truth. It invites us to live so fully from the truth that we live in true peace, true compassion, and true freedom. Now, when we begin to actually live from this place of truth, when we stop telling those lies, big and small, to ourselves and others, an interesting thing happens, something that neuroscientist and cultural anthropologist Marie Martinez calls mourning the known misery. What is that saying? Better the devil you know than the one you don't. Stepping out of our comfort zone, even into the light of our own true nature, can be scary. How do you know you're in your comfort zone? Whatever zone you're in right now, that's your comfort zone. Because if it weren't, you would be doing something else. Martha Beck says, if you start honoring your true nature and find yourself missing your old culture, don't panic. Be kind to yourself. Allow yourself space and time to grieve, but don't think that missing your old life means you should go back to it. Everyone who decides to embrace integrity must mourn the known misery. the familiar patterns and dysfunctional relationships that they've left behind. I promise, if you give your grief space and time, it will eventually bring you to a level of joy you may never have imagined. Have you ever had that experience of moving into an alignment so true that you had to leave parts of your life behind? I have. And for me, at times, it was scary and it was sad. Especially scary because at the time, I didn't actually realize that what I was doing was moving into alignment with my true nature. I was just trying to stay sane. I was just trying to grow up. I was just trying to adult in the best way I could. I just thought it was just a divorce. I did. I thought it was just moving away across the country from my family and everything I had ever known. Now I know that these huge life-altering events are simply me turning towards the truth of my nature. I couldn't be married to that person and stay in my integrity. I couldn't live in the culture of my childhood, which is deeply patriarchal in nature, and live in my true nature and be at peace. I couldn't do that. And I can see other times in my life when I made smaller turns towards truth that weren't as momentous at the time, but in some ways these smaller turns have had just as great an impact. Do you know these times in your lives? Can you recognize these times for yourself? Sometimes when we've had to turn away from people and places and situations that didn't really align with our true nature. Can you see that what you were actually doing is bringing yourself into alignment with your soul, with that thing that is whole in you, your integrity? And here's the thing. When we are in perfect alignment with that integrity, we automatically begin to do things that bring us joy. We become a great big yes to all the things that bring us soul satisfaction. And this brings a deep and abiding joy that lights up the world. So if the first step on this path of peace is to acknowledge that I am in fact meant to live in peace, as Reverend Shannon taught us, and the second step is to stop lying to ourselves and others, as practitioner Sarah taught us, the third step is to simply live from this place. Martha Beck quoted a psychologist friend of hers saying it this way: just know what you really know, feel what you really feel, say what you really mean, and do what you really want. Know what you know, feel what you feel, say what you mean, and do what you want. That sounds a little subversive. Does that sound a little scary to you? A little dangerous? As someone who has raised 4 children, this sounds super dangerous. Like if we all just ran around feeling our big feelings and doing whatever we want. Like, have you ever lived with a 3rd grade boy? I'll let you know. Everyone would be naked and there would be Legos everywhere. Right? That's what it sounds like, doesn't it? Is it just me? I feel like if we all could just do what we want, like no one would be here because we would have all escaped to the beach with like our pumpkin spice everything. Never to be heard from again. Is that what's going to happen if we are all living from truth and doing what we really want to do? Is that what's going to happen? I have news. And by the way, my kids are actually great. That was just, hi, children. I love you. When we talk about people doing whatever brings them joy, we assume that means that we're all going to Netflix and chill for the rest of our lives, right? But here's the thing. Our souls don't actually want to be lazy or secluded. We might want it for a few days, but then our souls want to do meaningful work. Martha Beck says, once we commit to being our true selves in every word and action, we emanate the love that is our essence. Bless you. Having left the anguish of being split and come into the blessed relief of being whole and undivided, we deeply want to offer the same relief to others. Your way of integrity might be to raise one happy child, or for that matter, one happy kitten. Or you may surprise yourself by becoming a social activist or a healer of bodies, of hearts, of systems, the planet. You'll want to make the world a kinder, healthier, fairer place. You'll want to do it all the time. Try it. You'll see. So now that we know that we want to live from that place of integrity within us, and now that we know that we deserve to live in peace and joy, and now that we know how to get there, what happens when we stumble on the path? Because we all stumble. We all make mistakes. We are all on a learning path, and we always have more to learn about ourselves and each other. What happens when we're challenged, when we start to tell that lie because we're trying to hide, we're trying to stay safe? What happens when our ego throws a tantrum worthy of a tired and hungry 3-year-old? Martha Beck gives us a roadmap. Y'all, this book is brilliant. And if you've been in our community for any length of time, these steps are going to sound awfully familiar. In fact, I'm pretty sure it is literally the 5 talking points of my last talk. These are her steps for staying on the path of integrity. Number 1, notice the symptom of being out of alignment. Number 2, track the false belief that is driving the experience. These are her words, not mine. Number 3, question the belief. Number 4, tune into your true nature. And number 5, respond creatively according to your real values. I'm going to go over those again. Notice the symptom of being out of alignment. You know, most often I notice the symptom that I'm out of alignment through that beautiful vehicle called my feelings. I know because I feel it when I am out of alignment. I feel it in my body. Practitioner Sarah last week said she feels it in her gut. Yes, I feel it in my gut. I feel it in my heart. Sometimes I feel it as a tightening in my throat. My body's way of reminding me to pay attention to what I'm saying, right? So we notice that we're out of alignment. That's the first step. The second step is to track the false belief that is driving the experience. I like to ask myself, what story am I telling about this situation that's making me feel this way, and where did that story come from? Number 3, question the belief. One of the tools that Martha Beck talks about in her book for questioning the belief, which I wholeheartedly endorse, is to use Byron Katie's The Work. You can just Google the inquiry, the 4 questions. 4 liberating questions. Google that, and that is a great way to check in and see whether what you are believing is actually true. Is it absolutely true? Can I absolutely know that this is true? They're great, great work, the 4 liberating questions. Step number 4 was to tune into your true nature. This is why we spiritual practice. This is why practitioner Shelley stands up before you every single Sunday and says, let's do some spiritual practice. Because if we aren't familiar with our true nature, we cannot tune into it. We can't listen to it. We can't recognize the difference between the voice of our true nature and the voice of fear unless we are familiar with it. So this is why we do our spiritual practice. And number 5, respond creatively according to your real values. Your real values. This is the way of integrity, and it works. In time, by simply following this path, you will find yourself moving away from drama, moving away from fear, and moving more and more into alignment with your true nature. And interestingly, just as this is true of us as individuals, it's also true of us collectively. Right now, humanity as a whole has a great big case of what Martha Beck calls error syndrome. I think that's why those of us who are finding our way on this path of integrity feel so called to do something and kind of helpless when we feel like we can't. Martha Beck says the bad news is that if you don't find integrity yourself, then even your best intentions will only replicate the dysfunctions of your culture. You can't build a high-performance airplane out of broken parts. The good news is that once you've aligned your whole life with truth, you'll automatically begin working to repair damage wherever you find it. You won't be able to witness suffering without responding in some way, your unique, particular way. You'll stop being part of humanity's problems and become part of the solution. So it's true, doing our own work actually serves the world. And if it's true that we're all interconnected, if it's true that we're all one, then everything that we do to bring more health, more love, more peace into our lives automatically affects the world. But what's more, as we begin to truly live from that place of wholeness and creativity, we're also able to be active contributors to good in the world. How lovely is that? This book is chock full of exercises, really good ones. And we're going to do a version of one of them right now to help us see connections between things we do to improve our own life and things we can do to affect the rest of the world. Are you ready? Okay. This is a thinking exercise more than a feeling exercise, so you may or may not want to rest your eyes or find a soft gaze, or you might just want to keep them open. Do whatever feels comfortable for you. And I'm going to invite you to think about some of the problems that you see in our world. Focus on something that you find particularly troubling. It might be racism or political corruption, poverty, climate change, cruelty to animals, war, crime. What do you find particularly troubling? Whatever sparks the strongest reaction in you, just allow it. What is a problem that you see in our world? I don't often ask you to focus on problems, but just for a moment, zoom in on the issue that you've identified. And though it may be painful, really focus on what's going on. Know what you really know. And what is one thing that would help this problem? What is one thing that could lift this situation? Maybe it's something you could do. Maybe it's something someone else could do. Doesn't have to even make logical sense. Maybe you just want them to stop. What would help? Now we're going to flip the script a little bit, and we're going to make this personal. Is there any way in which your treatment of yourself mirrors this problem? I'm going to give you some examples. You may worry about polluting the land and the sea, but still put a lot of toxic substances into your own body. You may be angry about some human beings seeing others as inferior while seeing yourself as inferior in some way. You may despise cruelty to animals, but drive your body to keep going, to stay cooped up when it longs to be outside, or forcing it to do the work it hates. Are there ways that you inflict on yourself the problem you see in the world? Take a breath. So think again about things that people could do to fix this problem in the world. Could any of these actions be applied to you? To your relationship with yourself and your integrity? take a breath and come back. So let me ask you, what do you think our world would look like 5 years from now if we all spent 20 minutes a day working on this issue? 10 minutes on us, 10 minutes on ourselves, and 10 minutes on the issue out in the world. What if we all did that? What if 1/10 of the world's population did that? I got out my calculator and I broke it. It started using exponents. Do you remember exponents, Brian? Ish, exactly. So I'm not going to give you any math numbers. I'm just going to, but think about it. Think about what our world would look like if we just spent 20 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day working on the issue in myself. Why do I still have this toxic behavior against myself? Why do I inflict that on myself? Aren't I worthy of the same love that I believe others are worthy of? And we did that work in ourselves. And then what if we just took 10 minutes to focus on it in the world? Gave ourselves the gift of doing a workshop with Jen and writing postcards to remind people how important this next vote is. What if we just took 10 minutes a day to do something in the world? What would our world look like in 5 years? Just imagine. In 2018, a group of psychologists led by J.D.W. Clifton published the results of a 5-year study in which they found that our culture is divided between people who see the universe as dangerous, frightening, meaningless, and those who see it as safe, enticing, and alive. The researchers called these two perspectives primal world needs. They described how, because perception is selectively screened and interpreted according to belief systems, which is what we've been talking about for decades, y'all. Because perception is selectively screened and interpreted according to belief systems, people in either camp can find abundant evidence to support their world views. As you move closer and closer to pure integrity, you will begin to feel safe and alive. You'll begin to feel that life is indeed enticing and that you have much to offer. You will begin to love everything. And as Martha Beck says, it will be obvious to you that everything loves you back. In her book, Martha writes about a poem written by her friend and now life partner, Rowan Mangan, called The Turning. In this poem, a divine force from the distant future reminisces about the time humans almost broke the world. You tore this world and I watched, says this omniscient narrator, referring to the time that we are living in now. I felt the air's grim thickening, saw the waters rise. But then, just as the damage seems irreversible, humans changed course. And the poem says, what crucial inspiration turned you at last? I'll never know what broke over you and with what calamity, clamor, or grace. But when you knelt as one, it was a mighty sight. You placed your hunger on the ground and left it to lie among the gadgetry of old logics, beside the corpses of cruelty and greed. So then came the time of the great unbuilding, where everyone's name is stillness. Then came the time of the great unbuilding. I believe that humanity is ripe for this great unbuilding. I believe it's time for us to retire our old logics and our petty fear and return to our wholeness, to live from that place and to help the world make this great shift. I do believe that we are meant for peace, that we're built for compassion, that we belong to each other. And as we come home to ourselves, we erase the barriers between our hearts. This happens when we have the courage to tell the whole truth, when we have the courage to respond creatively from our values and not from our pain bodies, When we have the courage to let others see us in our brokenness, oddly, we come more fully into our wholeness. This book, this community, this life is an invitation for you to find your way home, to find your way back into that place of integrity within you. It hasn't gone anywhere. You haven't harmed it. It's whole because it is wholeness, and it is you. And all you need to do to access it, all you need to do to live from it, is speak the truth. Speak the truth with love in your heart. Reverend Shannon says you can say anything when you say it with love. First, you have to access the love. Then you can speak your whole truth. And freedom is on the other side. Peace is in the midst of it. It takes a little bit of courage, but what it gives is immeasurable. This is an invitation for you to find your way back to the place of wholeness that is your true nature. You want to join me on the path?
Hi, friends. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that this message supported you. We are a nonprofit, and we do all of this based solely on the gifts that you give. No amount is too small or too large. You can text to give. You can go online and check out our website. We're doing so much. You can give that way. Thank you so much for being here, for being a part of this community, and for supporting this message of bringing more light, more love, and spirit-led social action out into the world. Thank you. You're loved. So loved.